It gives me great pleasure to have Rainer back on the Sales Transformation podcast again, and I suspect there's going to be another time after this to celebrate his doctorate as well. Rainer, it's just always wonderful to have you on the show. Yeah, nice to have you back.
Thank you very much, Phil. I appreciate it for being back and for the invitation. And it's a very important topic we're talking about today.
It is a very important topic, and it's a topic that we've never really introduced before, because we now have a number of you are transitioning from the master's program into becoming an international, globally recognized author of a book, or one of a number of authors. And so this is the main purpose of this session, which is to talk about, how did it come about? What sort of journey have you been on? And also to talk about specifically the chapter that you have been behind, what's it about? What's motivated you to put the chapter together? What do you think the readers of the book are going to get from your contribution? So there's a huge number of questions there rolled up into one. So where do we start?
Well, from my perspective, it's all about the motivation and the inspiration that brought me to the point where I said, okay, why do I want to do this? And it's not about me. It's really about the team of people, of intrinsically motivated individuals who said, hey, we believe in inspiring leaders with the research that we have done, the action-based research that we have done as part of the masters with Consalia. And we all said, coming together as a team, writing a chapter, each and every one of us, and bringing this together in a book is something new. It's a new challenge. It's something that we have not done before, and quite frankly, nobody else has done before. So this is really super inspiring for us, and it was super inspiring for me, because I said, hey, if with anyone on this planet, I would like to work with this group, because it was just an amazing experience throughout the master's program and also in dealing with them afterwards. And I learned so much from them, and it was just a great, inspiration.
Yeah, I think that what I found interesting about, about the book is the fact that, the central theme of the book is around leading sales transformation. But the way that it explores that topic is through such different lenses. And each one of you have approached your own research through a particular view. And I think that's what makes the book such a great book to pick up and read. It's not often in a book you can get such different points of view being expressed, whether it's around mythology, whether it's around leadership in a digital world, or whether it's around, recruitment and testing and so on. So yeah. No, I think it's fabulous, and I'm just so thrilled that it's come together. Rainer, can you tell us a little bit more about the book, just at a sort of fairly high level, and then we could delve perhaps into the chapter that you've been sort of focusing on?
Absolutely. So I wanted to focus on one of my favorite topics in research and in my practical life as a leader in a real organization, in a real company, in a real world, in a real job. And that is how to deal with the future, how to deal with uncertainty, how to deal with the chaos that is brought by technology. I work in a technology company, and I see leaders who are confronted with the impact of technology disruption. And this digitalization is bringing a huge challenge with the fast-paced changes. And we didn't have this many years ago. So technology brings a lot of disruption, and leaders need to deal with this kind of disruption all around the globe, quantum computing fuels big data, the Internet of Things fuels artificial intelligence, deep learning fuels robotics, and who knows what is going to replace our jobs in the future? These are the questions, not only by leaders, but with people working in pretty much every industry. Will we be replaced by technology? So that has been brought up centuries ago, and still technology is one of the biggest fears. And from my perspective, the more digital disruption leads to accelerated change, the more, from my perspective, human behaviors, personal interactions that are somehow underpinned with trust are becoming more important. The human aspects become more important the more digital technologies or technologies as such are coming up. And the question is now for me, how will the leaders of the future deal with this perfect storm of change that is accelerated and that is coming to everybody's life, even in personal and private life?
Yeah.
And then the question is, what are the required leadership behaviors which help you to not only deal with the changes, but hey, how can you deal with these changes in the future as a leader?
I think it's I think you're in an incredibly unique position, to talk about this, Rainer, because you are working for a company who is really right at the heart of digital disruption in many ways, with ERP solutions historically that have been fundamental to the way so many of the companies around the world operate, and working and supporting selling organizations who are selling to end customers who have to adopt that digital world, which you and SAP are kind of selling. But you're also a leader and going through yourselves at SAP, a huge amount of disruption. We've seen just recently the impact of potential AI has on SAP as well as a company. So you're right at the center of so much change happening. So it must be quite interesting for you to reflect on leadership living through such momentous changes taking place in your own company. And I just wonder what is the future for leadership in that world? What will make the great leader of the future in your view?
So first, there's no such thing as the one leader. There are always completely different perspectives. And that is what I try to bring into the research and into the book and into this chapter. So I did research on three audiences, three types of leaders. One is the experienced sales leader who had been around for quite some time. One is the opposite, new people in the company, digital natives who want to become sales leaders as quickly as possible. And then small companies, startups, CEOs that are in a small type company environment that are in this storm of change every single day. So three different areas of people that I wanted to look at and wanted to investigate and research on. And the amount of learning and the insights I got from these audiences was absolutely amazing. It was astonishing. I did not believe that, I would be in a situation with a 20-year-old CEO who said, "Oh, this is my third company." And I was tempted to say, "I want to work for you now." It was absolutely phenomenal. And that was true leadership. Just this one conversation I had with this person was absolutely phenomenal. And he had, I don't know how many degrees. I mean, such a person to look up at and to follow. That is true leadership. And that was quite different. And of course, the interesting conversations with digital natives brought me to a different perspective. So I was trying to bring different views on the topic of leadership together to then say, all right, what is it that I can learn? What is it that I can bring to the reader in terms of insight, in terms of learnings, in terms of some different perspectives. I'm not saying that this will be the leadership model for the future, or here's the framework, but I just said, hey, there are 4 areas where I say, just think about those, and you will be a much better leader, potentially, than you are today.
So you interviewed or explored this topic through the lenses of 3 sort of different potential scenarios of leadership. How different is leadership according to whichever situation you're in, whether you're that young person in a startup versus a digital native versus someone working in a more mature company?
It was amazing to see how many things were very, very similar, and some things were completely the opposite. But most of the comments and most of the research feedback was very similar on one of the most important elements, that was trust. Trust as the ultimate currency. Yeah. And that was, okay, how do you build trust? So one of the questions that I discussed became very soon, okay, what is the definition of trust? What builds trust? What makes a person, a leader, trustworthy? Or what makes a person trustworthy to become a leader? And of course, things like authenticity, empathy, honesty, humanity, the values, and so on. And really, we had in-depth conversations. And that's all part of that chapter. Now then, another important aspect was communication. Yeah. Communication is key. Now, that may not be a new insight for the dear reader of the book, of the chapter. However, the one aspect that really came across was, hey, communication is about connecting with people through trust. So there was this connection that communication, if it's based on trust, really makes a difference for leaders. To first, you need to establish your vision and your objectives, and then you think about how to connect with other team members. Now, how to connect with other team members may be your vision and objectives, but also, some things that build trust, like I mentioned before. But most important, you need to bring people behind your goals and you as a leader personally, and you need to get them on board for the joint ride ahead. And that is people competence. And it's very important because many of the digital natives said, hey, I can do anything because I know how to Google, I know how to use social media, I know how to do any task. Now, so they said, and I expect you to extend trust in advance as a leader. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. I mean, you're self-conscious. I mean, you really think you can do anything? That's very interesting. And then they said, yes, of course, I need to have trust in advance. And I said, yes, now maybe you show me why I should trust you. So maybe you would do something to become trustworthy. So you are now in the leadership position. And they looked at me and said, oh, this is not what I have expected. And I said, this is exactly what it's about. So at the end of the day, it's really about the communication that inspires people, communication that inspires me, communication that inspires the other person to say, all right, I need to fill my heart with something so that I can work with my whole heart. That was a quote of a digital native.
Right.
And one of the other things in terms of communication is expect the unexpected, and be open to new communication methods. And some of the tools they use, I never heard of them. It was really, really interesting. So that was another aspect. And then dealing with startup companies, it's about disruption and how they talk about disruption as the new normal. So there were lots of different aspects where I said, yes, I have heard about it, I read about it, but now let's go into the detail. And what does it mean to disrupt a market? And what does it mean to disrupt as part of a company, as a small company, and to have a different mindset that is required as a leader?
Yeah.
And I could go on, Phil. I could
Yeah,
go on now.
I know you can, but we don't want to give away all the secrets that are in the book, do we?
Yeah.
No, we want people to go and take a read of the book. But I am interested in this notion of trust and human that you mentioned earlier on. I think it's interesting that you talk about human in a world that's becoming more digital, as if because it's becoming more digital, we need to become more human. I'm not sure if that is exactly what you mean, but there's a danger that we could lose. What I'm sensing from you is a danger we could lose the human touch as we rely more and more on the daily activities of running a business on digitalization.
Yes. So in the VUCA world of volatility, of uncertainty, of complexity, ambiguity, from my experience, uncertainty is the killer for people in a work environment when they don't know what's currently happening.
Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with communication. Now, how can you deal with uncertainty as a leader? And that is to bring in the context and provide a structure and to provide something that brings understanding and clarity to people. That will really help. And what I have experienced, and I did a lot of exercises, and it's great to get insights and have research and results and so, but then I try to apply these things, these learnings and insights. Is it really working? And it's really interesting when I say, before I give you my viewpoint on this topic, I want to provide you the context. And then I pause. I'm famous for my pauses. And then I'm famous for the 3 things that I provide. And then I say, okay, and here is the context why we're talking about this. Yeah? And here are the 3 things why it's so important for you and how it matters to you from my perspective. The 3 things. And then I force people to listen to the 3 things. And it takes a long time because I always use these pauses as an element, and my wife doesn't really like it when I do these pauses, and nobody really likes it, but I want to get the points across. And then people say, oh, that's really interesting. Please give us some time to think about it. I'm like, that's why I'm making these pauses, so that you have the time to think about it, because I want to get the message across. It's important to provide the context, but it's more important to provide the people, to get the people behind you, so that you bring them on the same bus, on the same route, and you can move forward.
I was on a workshop the other day and we were talking about VUCA, and I asked the question of the people in the room, how many of you thrive in uncertainty? And you probably know the answer to this question, because 95% of the people put their hands up. I must admit, I found that slightly surprising, because I would say that I thrive in uncertainty. I enjoy it, because I've always associated uncertainty with opportunity. And, you know, within uncertainty, there's opportunity to learn, and there's an opportunity to find new ways of doing things. But I must admit, I was quite surprised in the discussion that took place afterwards that actually that's not what many people like. And of course, it is obvious, because I know that sometimes people around me, you know, sort of don't quite, you know, we talk about the vortex, in which is sometimes created in the world of Consalia, because things are moving so quickly and unexpectedly, and curveballs coming at people left, right, and center. But actually, it's very interesting, I think, what you say. And I think what I picked up from the conversation is about communication and trust, or trust through communication. You know, you can have trust in a business, but you may have poor communication. And if you don't have good communication aligned with trust, then I can see that, you know, the leadership concept breaks down somewhat. Yeah. don't quite know where we're going, don't quite know why we're getting there. Yes, we trust you, but there's a problem with communication. It's not clear enough.
Yes, and sometimes as a leader, you cannot make it clear and you cannot be precise and you cannot say, hey, here's the understanding. And that is okay to actually provide this kind of context to say, you know what, guys, I wish I could tell you what the situation is about, but I can't right now. I do not have the answer. Now, that makes you vulnerable as a leader. And people can say, hey, if you don't know, you're at the higher ranks and, other pay grade level and so on and so forth. But no, it's okay to say, I don't know. If you then continue like, but I would like to understand from you what I can do to provide an answer or what you think about it so we can work on a solution together. Something like that. And it may not apply to every situation, but it's okay to say, I don't know right now, because the circumstances are like they are. I do not want to ignore reality, and I do not want to simplify something that is really complex. Sometimes you cannot simplify. Although I always want to put everything into 3 things, and I want to structure the communication, I want to provide the context, and I have my model of doing this as a leader. Sometimes you cannot. And you have to explicitly provide this context as well and say, hey, here's a moment where I don't know, and let's figure this out together. That may be the basis to become even more trustworthy, or where people say, oh, I understand now, and okay, it's the situation. But standing in front of your people with broad shoulders and saying, I care for you, and I'm telling you right now, this is one of the elements. I still care for you. I don't know the answer. It's perfectly fine from my experience.
Thank you, Rainer. So let's come back to the book. Is it now available for public to buy? I'm not sure it is, but it's very soon, isn't it?
Yes, it's going to be available on April 26th, so this week. And it will be available online, and you can purchase it through Routledge, the publisher, or through Amazon. So it's going to be available online, and it is something, again, that I have not seen before, and I've read lots and lots of books and literature about leadership, but these different views and different perspectives that are relevant from a practical point of view for the practitioner based on research, that combination I haven't seen before.
No, and we really look forward to including it on our reading list for the master's program, Rainer. So I have to thank, all the efforts that you and the fellow authors have made into pulling this together. But it's going to be wonderful to be able to share it with students coming through the program. They're going to get a huge amount of benefit from it. I absolutely know. But it's been an incredible journey, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the inspiration goes on and on and on. And, to top that, it's about enthusiasm. And how can you be enthusiastic, after launching a joint book? Let's go for the doctorate. Who knows what comes afterwards? We don't know. Let's see.
Who knows?
Well, surprise ourselves.
Like you say, it's a VUCA world we live in, slightly uncertain, but whatever, I'm sure it's going to be an exciting one. So Rainer, thank you so much for joining us on the Sales Transformation podcast alongside your fellow authors. It is unique, it is exciting, and I'm absolutely delighted that you've managed to get a publisher behind the book as well in Routledge. It's been a brilliant achievement. So well done.
Thank you, Phil, for your partnership. Thank you for your ongoing support. I know it will go on for the rest of our lives. And it's one part of the journey, and the journey will continue. I'm sure of that. And whatever happens in the future, let's do this together as partners.
As partners. Thank you. So for this podcast, what we're doing is we're introducing a new book that has just been published. It's called Transformational Sales Leadership. It's a book which has involved a number of different contributors. I think there are 12 or 13. Sarkis will point me in the right direction on the numbers later. But it's a fascinating book which actually takes the perspective of different authors, exploring through their particular area of interest this notion of some of the leadership challenges that are faced in this sort of transformational age in which we live. So I'm very happy to have Sarkis with us. He's a master's alumni, as indeed are a number of the other contributors to the book. And Sarkis, in chapter 12, has written a chapter of the book about humanifying leadership for the 21st century. So, Sarkis, welcome to this podcast. It's nice to have you back again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Phil. It's my pleasure to be here and talk about chapter 12, which is, the chapter that I have written. And you're absolutely right. There are 12 chapters of this book.
And I just want to say that this, for me, when I started to kind of read this chapter of the book that Sarkis has written, one can see this sort of thread of interest coming from originally his sort of master's dissertation. But I wonder, Sarkis, if you could just give us a talk through about what you have written about in this chapter.
Yeah, sure. No, with pleasure. So first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to promote the chapter and the book, which I believe is a book, according to my opinion. I've read all the other 11 chapters, and I had the opportunity to co-author one of them. But in my chapter, I'm centralizing the idea about a humanifying leadership. And there's, I think, a difference between humanifying and humanizing, which I'm deliberately mentioning that because it comes from the anthropological understanding about humanifying and humanizing. Tim Ingold, one leading scholar and anthropologist, is speaking about humanizing and humanifying. With humanizing, he actually takes the process of all of us becoming human beings. It is a natural stage where, we learn from other people and we become human beings. Humanifying is a continuous evolvement as human beings. And that is the difference, which is, I think, a small pronunciation difference of the world, but has a huge meaning behind of it. And the involvement of anything that we are doing, and that includes also leadership, is I think, a key element that, according to my opinion, might be proven wrong, but this is what I'm investigating, we are forgetting to evolve. If you look into traditional leadership models, then you will see that in the last 30 to 40 years, nothing really has changed. Still, you have autocratic leadership models, you have authentic leadership models, you have transformational, transactional leadership models, servant leadership models. Authors that I quote also into my work because they have worked on these theories, but they have developed something at that time, so 40, 50, 60 years ago. But do we have new leadership models arising? I haven't seen anything lately that really stands out. And that in a time where the technological advantage that we have with the internet and artificial intelligence is equivalent, and this is what anthropologists say, with a time where writing was invented. And we don't change anything in leadership. So that brought me into the process of looking into what is wrong with the leadership, let's say, practice. Coming from a practical perspective, because I am working now more than 25 years in different leadership roles, at the same time looking into the theory, the academics, but also into the education of the young people. And that together actually has brought me into the way of introducing a potential concept which is not ready yet, which is called metanoia. And metanoia, if I translate it literally, means changing your mind. And I try to inspire a potential direction for leaders to step back and reset of how we experience and how we live leadership and how we humanify ourselves. So evolve actually into the next level in the digital age that we live, and we embrace the digital technology to become better leaders.
Yes, I'm so glad you sort of mentioned technology, because of course, you know, you're a leader working in an incredible sort of technology company as is SAP, and you know, one you know, arguably we've gone through a huge transformation through the kind of digital through the digital age, and of course now we have artificial intelligence, and we're beginning to look at how artificial intelligence can sort of take over, you know, the different roles of individuals in a company. And I guess in that sort of VUCA world that we live, we're at possibly a huge inflection point. Would you say that was true, that society is at an inflection point now, given where the technology is heading?
Yeah, I think it is an inflection point, but not because of technology. I think it is an inflection point because we live in the Anthropocene. It is the time where the actions of us as human beings have such a severe impact into our world and to our future that we have a responsibility to act in a way that we can shape our future. We as human beings are, you know, causing anything that you see in, you know, the climate change, anything that you can see in poverty, injustice, and wars that we have. So you see that the social economical situation that we are putting ourselves in is something where the digital technology can help with, right? Yeah. We can use it for coming out of that. We can use it in order to work against diseases. We can use it in order to, you know, bring water there where no water is. We can use it in order to become more intelligent in terms of understanding things. But at the end, we are driving this technology. So the question is, how do we use this technology in order to become more humans? So it is a paradox, right? You use technology to become more human, but maybe this is, you know, a sign of our time that this inflection point that you mentioned before is a point where we need to rethink how we use this digital technology to our benefit.
It's very interesting when you look at the word Anthropocene, because it's quite a controversial word in some ways, in the sense that I know that there's been a strong argument to have this recognized as an era. But I believe that there's been some pushback by some of the scientists as to whether or not we should, or it should be termed that way. I don't know if you want to explain a little bit more about how you see that word and its use, and where you see, you know, how you see it playing out in society.
So let me tell you why at least I believe it's the right word, without saying that I'm an anthropologist, but I have my opinion, let's put it that way, with reading around that topic. And the definition is that the proposed current geological epoch in which humans are the primary cause of permanent planetary change is the Anthropocene. This is how it is defined. And you know, without without someone need to read so much around of it, just with that two sentences, that humans are the primary cause, for things that are happening, for me, it is enough already to say it's a right definition of our time. Now, you can call it Anthropocene, you can call it differently, but anthropos as human comes from the Greek word, and scene is the epoch that we are working. It is the epoch where humans are influencing so much our planet with what we are doing, and it has consequences. And this is why I believe it is an appropriate definition of their time.
Yeah. No, I agree, and it's quite interesting that in some of the work that we're doing, clearly we do a lot of work with this, great technology companies, but we also do an increasing amount of work with people at the other end, if you like, of the value chain. And I'm talking about people who are involved in mining and commodity mining, and what you begin to realize is the kind of resources that the world has, which is going to fuel, the food that we eat, the climate, the air that we breathe, and all of those things is totally connected, and we can't look at one without the other. I think it's been estimated in a book that's just come out called The Material World that we have about 80 years worth of copper production left, based on current demand, just 80 years, so the link between, the commodities that we rely on that help fuel some of the, the food production, the cars that we drive in, the ships that we sail in, the planes that we fly on, the basic that, it's a finite resource. And so we've got to take care of the way in which we look at the world holistically. And I think that this is very much, part of what you feel is a responsibility of leadership, is that that we've got to think of how we can make the world a better place for our children to live in moving forward. Have I rather too simplified things, Sarkis,
No, absolutely. I think you put it in really good words, because what we have to be capable to do is to transmit a message so that everybody understands it. So this is why I may speak about the Anthropocene, but I'm absolutely fine if somebody calls it digital age or the age that he wants, because it is not about the name that we are giving. It is about the problem as you described. So we have to look into what it means to create situations where the human values are in front of everything that we are doing, and leaders have a responsibility. I have created a video around of this topic where we see the political tensions, the war tensions, the economic tensions that we have, the tectonic shifts in the economy, how businesses are changing and how much we focus on profits. And we put aside, the elementary things which allow us to be humans, and we ignore them for the sake of the profits. So we need to keep a balance. I'm working also for a profit-oriented company, but I believe that each profit-oriented company needs to have also a sustainable way and a lens towards what is social responsibility that they keep and give back to the community and to the social environment, so that we can, as you said before, create a better future for our children.
So if you were going to summarize some of the key takeaways from the chapter of the book that's come out, and congratulations, by the way, it is such a great book to read. So I recommend all the listeners pick up the book and read it. It's so interesting. But what from your chapter, Sarkis, would be the key thing that you'd like people to take away from the chapter?
I believe that maybe 3 points. The one is I'm speaking about leadership in insanity. So, getting crazy as a leader is something that I have observed in many situations with myself in roles, but also with others, where I really see the psychological world of people coming up and down. And this has to do, or the cause of this, the root cause of that comes in the sandwich position in leadership that you have sometimes from your management and your team. The second part, I believe, which is important to maybe look into my chapter, is the inspiration that we can get. What do I mean by, humanifying? It is not as simple as say, let us be humans. Yes, that's the basis, but humanifying is something that will help us all to focus on human values. And the third point is that I started to scratch, I think, a first design of what would be a potential way for us to come back into the origin ideas by metanoia, meaning that changing the mind needs us all to step back, reflect, and maybe give the opportunity for us to see things differently. I have went through this process, and I'm still in this process, and it's very, let's say, reviving and for me at least exciting. So I would recommend, if I can inspire anyone who will read this chapter, then I'm very open to be contacted on that.
That's fantastic. And of course, you are on a journey, because it's not, I know that we've got the book coming out, but it's also been written in parallel with your doctorate dissertation as well that you're involved in, which I'm really excited to catch up on, Sarkis. So I wonder if you could give us an idea about how this amazing journey that you've been on, actually just talking to you about it is completely inspiring. But could you tell us a bit more about the doctorate and what some of the key topics are of your research there? I know you've not completed it yet, but it's just very interesting to hear where you're headed with your research at the moment.
Sure, I think, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about my doctorate. As you will probably find out, I had the chance to take my master thesis, bring it over to the book, and extend and evolve, let's say, into a more deeper perspective. And pursuing a doctorate was always my wish. I had always excuses why I will not do it, and now I run out of excuses. But I believe it was more important that I get the chance to do a doctorate, which I'm very thankful for, doing that at Middlesex University. And the master's was, I think, a driving force for me to get the confidence that I can do it. And that helped quite a lot. And I'm taking the topics that I had in the master's with the importance of the ethical dimension of leadership. I'm taking that, what I've put into the book, the humanified leadership, and I want to deep dive into humanified leadership. And I speak about the rise of the humanified leader in the age of AI. Okay. So this is where it comes together, I believe, a bit, technology, the humanification factor that we need to have as leaders, the ethical part, going back to the roots and appreciate, the empathic way of leading people, the purpose-driven way of leading people, as well as being humble and respecting diversity. All those are parts of my doctor thesis. I'm running currently a survey that I have launched, and it will go out to the brighter mass of the communities that I'm working with next week, which is a survey of for this doctorate, and goes to leadership, but also to employees and people that have been in leadership positions, but not anymore. So it's not excluding just to get the view of leaders, but it is important to get also the view of the people that are look up into leaders. And sometimes it's even more important. So I want to balance that view. I want to include also different generations, because I believe that what I find out that women are more shy to come into the surveys. So I need to represent also women to that, and anything else that would like to join. And we have also the potential to get some young people inside in order to understand of how they perceive leadership. At the end, I'm also focusing quite a lot into the dark side of leadership, and I try to bring a couple of examples that we see. So whoever wants to look into my blogs, actually you will find that under www.hamleads.org, and you can find blogs that I'm writing. You can subscribe to my newsletters, where I'm talking also about dark side of leadership, use cases that are coming, from companies that we all know. I don't want to pick now one and put it into the spot, but I have use cases around how humanified leadership can bring, a complete, not only transformation, but a revolution in a company in order to conquer the market. And you have also the dark side of leadership, which also can have the same effects, but rather with a disappointing, let's say, workforces in a way of mental health and mental commitment into the company. So that's a bit that what I'm trying to do. We see also the dehumanization factor of business schools coming up as an important point.
Wow.
You mentioned Fred Kiel before.
Yeah.
Patrick Lieri is another associate professor that I'm following, which has, a direction that I was inspired to, and he's talking also about this humanification. And the last point is that I try to do that under a transdisciplinary lens, where I want to involve also psychology. It has philosophy insights and some other disciplines that I have not studied, but I'm trying to understand through academic articles and bring it in a, let's say, more understandable, or let's say into a language that is also from a business terminology understandable into my work.
It's fantastic. It really is amazing how you've moved things on. And I must admit, just on one of the aspects, and I know it's just a small part of the area that you're looking at, but this connection with AI that we talked about. And I had the privilege to yesterday actually been on a panel discussion with the global sales leaders of a big oil business. And sitting with me was another alumni of ours who also used to be at SAP, is now since left. His name is Paul Devlin. Mm-hmm. And you may have noticed some of Paul's work. But Paul, of course, is very much a data-driven. He's got some amazing concepts around coaching, and someone who I admire hugely. And he was talking about the way that AI is now being used inside his own company, and people were questioning the humanizing of the role of sales, in connection with AI. And he was actually counter-arguing this very strongly by saying that the way that they've implemented this technology inside his company, Causeway Technologies, is actually having the reverse effect with the sales force, because of the way they're using the technology to help with coaching, to help with making their jobs easier. They don't see AI as being micromanagement in any way, for example. But he stressed the importance of how you use information and insight to coach and develop people, rather than, smash people over the head with the lack of poor performance. So it was a really stimulating discussion that we had, and I'm sure Paul would be very interested in the research that you're currently doing.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I'll probably reach out to Paul. I admire his work too. The only thing that I want to say is about this AI-driven factor, ethics. This is where ethics play a big role. So how is the leader, and then the moral character, how is the leader using the information that he can gather? And at the end, everything comes back to ethics.
Yes, it does. It's so interesting. Well, Sarkis, I think we've probably taken up more than we should have done of your time across all of these podcasts. But I think as far as the book is concerned and about the dissertation, I just wonder where you're going to end up with all of this. I can see you as a professor of university at some stage, Sarkis. The academic research is really, I think it's part of your DNA now. So
it's exciting.
It is exciting. And I think the sales profession, honestly, has a lot to be thankful for with people like yourself, like some of your colleagues doing, the doctorate to actually elevate the kind of intellectual thought process that goes into a function of a business. It's often being considered very transactional. And I think that you're taking the thinking on to a completely new level. So I want to thank you, and all those like you who are sort of pushing the boundaries a bit with how we think about leadership. Thank you for investing your time and energy into doing it. I think it's very important. So thank you for joining us, Sarkis.
Thank you, Phil. And, you have always been an inspiration for me, and the masters, I know that you have contributed to that in a very special way and set it up and helped to, bring that into life. It is really one of the best programs that have helped me to be part of this book and to do my doctorate. So I have to just say the truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarkis.